Nicki Stevens, excuse me. Sit up here.
Thank you so very much. Hello. I am so excited to be here tonight. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you, Lloyd, for the introduction. Lloyd's right. We're all in the people business. And the more we know about people, the better we can serve them, right? And of course, we get to know them through communication. Communication's the most important thing we do all day long. Why do we communicate? I'm gonna make this as interactive as possible, so feel free, let me tell you, feel free to yell out your answers, yell them loud enough so they can hear you. I'll repeat them for Zoom. If you have any questions, raise your hand, because I'm happy to take questions. The questions that you have are most important for me to cover tonight. So if you came in with any situations or challenges, please do let me know. Did anybody come in with anything in particular in mind? That, man, I hope she talks about this. Or did anything stick out that you saw in the announcement? Overcoming objections. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Provide value to people.
I'm sorry?
Provide value to people.
To provide value to people. Okay. The information they need to give you the results you want, right? Building relationships. Good. Close deals. Okay. So to influence them. All right. Anything else? How to get started. Okay. I'm going to give you 5 steps to prepare for any conversation or any kind of communication, really. And I'll tell you, the communication I've seen in the room so far tonight has been very impressive. You know, the #1 fear among Americans is speaking in front of people. The 3rd greatest fear is death. So they say people would rather die than get up and speak in front of a group of people. And many of you stood up and spoke so well, and I'm like, wow, I'm impressed already. And thank you, Lloyd. Lloyd just handed out a piece of paper, right, to you. And at the top of that piece of paper, on one side is an action list. I always like to give an action list so that you can keep track of what you're gonna start doing and stop doing. So when you hear something tonight and you think, man, I didn't realize that was hurting me, we can put down, stop doing that, or something. If you hear something and you think, wow, I need to try that, that might just work, you put that in the start doing column. Now, of course, you're gonna hear things and you're gonna say, yeah, I've been doing that, and isn't it good to hear somebody else say that's the right thing to be doing? And that's when, and do this with me so I know you got it. That's when you're gonna do this. You're gonna reach out your right arm real far, do it with me, reach out your right arm real far, bend at the elbow, and pat yourself on the back, which we don't do often enough. Because, yep, I'm doing that right. She said that's right. So that's the continue doing. And then, of course, like Lloyd said, we need resources. We always need resources to help us, because we gotta work on this every single day. Do you think anybody is a perfect communicator? No, everybody has challenges. And that's one thing that we often don't think about. That we have our challenges with communication, but the person or people that we're communicating with, they have challenges too. So we're all worried about what we're doing, but we don't often think they're worried about what they're doing too. I think we're a little hard on ourselves and hard on each other, so we need to pat ourselves on the back once in a while. So if you have any resources that you use, I'm going to be sharing some with you tonight, and please do share those with the group. But that's there for you to keep track of. And then I put together actually a 12-page handout. And then, because I'm used to writing a workbook, and then I went to Office Max to print it out, and my handy dandy discount card wasn't quite as discounted as it used to be. So printing a lot of a 12-page handout was gonna be a little bit more than I could justify. So I sent it to Lloyd, he put it on the website.
Anyway, It's on the website. For our members' resources.
Okay,
Yeah.
on the website under members resources,
Members, resources, and then it's document library and presentations.
okay, member resources, document library, resources. Presentations, I beg your pardon. Document library. In the Zoom chat. Oh, it's in the Zoom chat for the people on Zoom too. Okay, fantastic. So feel free to print that out. And there are some blanks in it, but it's a good way for you to say, oh, do I remember what she said this was, and fill it in. So feel free to print that out. I quickly this afternoon put together this one page for you to use during the session tonight. So that's just a couple of pages out of the workbook, okay, that I squished together real quick. All right. Let me see, is there anything else we need to cover before we jump in here? So why do we communicate? To get to know each other? What else? Get things done. Nothing happens without communication, whether we're communicating to ourselves, with one person, or with a group of people. We communicate to get results because we want something to happen. And if we're not getting the results that we want, what do we need to do? Do something different. Communicate differently. Try something new. So my goal tonight is to give you lots of different ways that you can do this. And of course, the most important thing is thinking about the three components that we use to communicate: body language, tone of voice, and words. So we'll also cover that. We'll cover listening skills, and we'll talk some about conflict, because I know that's a biggie. Okay? So first of all, let's think about the definition of communication. The imparting or interchange of thoughts, opinions, or information by speech, writing, or signs. Think that's a pretty good definition of communication? Who's the most important person you communicate with all day long? Your spouse. You are more important than your spouse. Because what is going on in our head is coming out our mouth and coming out our fingers. So it's very important to listen to your self-talk. And what triggers body language and tone of voice? Thoughts. And what triggers thoughts? Emotions. So all that emotion, all that stuff going on in your head is coming out in your body language and your tone of voice. So we'll talk about that tonight too. How do you manage emotions so you don't give away your power, right? So remember, the most important person you communicate with is yourself. Let's take a look at the traditional communication model. So the sender has an idea, and they want to send it to the receiver. So they send it off to the receiver. The receiver thinks of a response and sends it back to the sender. That's the way we think about communication, right? But when you take a closer look at communication, I think we're missing a step in there. Because what happens is the sender has an idea, and they encode that idea. And then when the receiver gets it, they decode it. What do you think I mean by that? Encode and decode. What are we encoding and decoding with? Okay. Could be motive. Could be how we understand it, how we see it. Thoughts about it. Could be previous experience with this. Could be attitude. We encode all that into our message. How often are we communicating for the receiver? And how often are we communicating for ourselves? Are we communicating the way the receiver prefers to be communicated with? Are we communicating the way we like to be communicated with? Are we communicating the way that they might see this? Or are we communicating the way that we see it? And do we have any attitude about this? Are we encoding that attitude? Anybody read emails? There's a little bit of encoding going on there, isn't there? And with email especially, we think about perception. What's the person's perception of the message? We all have our own perception. So that's why it's really important to think about, what am I encoding? What are my emotions about this situation? How do I see this? And am I communicating for me, or am I communicating for my receiver? Think about, and then how are they decoding this? What emotion do they have about this? What past experiences, what fears, what objections? And thinking about that as we send the message to them. What are they decoding it with? And when we're the receiver, what are we decoding someone else's message with? And doing that perception checking. I'm going to encourage you tonight to be a question asker. Be intrigued, be interested, ask questions, peel the onion, get to the root of the issue. So often, we just handle the surface issues and wonder why problems keep happening. But if we peel that onion and get to the root of the problem, handle the root of the problem, if we solve the root of the problem, now we've solved the problem. And that takes communicating, and it takes listening. Body language, tone of voice, and words. These are the three things we use to communicate. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write down these three things: body language, tone of voice, and words. And the people that are on Zoom, if you have or you know how to use the Zoom annotation feature, please feel free to do that. Chris, do you know how to clear that off? If they use that, I don't know that it'll come up on here now that I'm thinking about it. Am I connected to Zoom, Chris? Yeah. I am? Okay. Body language, tone of voice, and words. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to put a number next to each of those, representing the percent of impact you think each of those has on our face-to-face communication, our face-to-face in-person communication. What percent of impact do you think each of those has? Which do you believe the most? Which do you pay the most attention to? Which one do you think tells you the most? Now, the three numbers will add up to 100, okay? Because these three things come together to put forth our message. What numbers are you writing down? What do you think? Oh, thanks so much. Anybody need a pen? Lloyd's got some.
So I put like words is like 10%, tone is 50, body language is 40.
Okay, so you think tone is most. Can you help us understand why?
Just in my experience, well, and how I receive things is when there's a tone or inflection, for me that triggers my nervous system a lot of times. If it's an angry tone or not even the body language, but I can hear it. Like I feel it now, that visceral reaction when somebody's angry or has a frustrated or just a disappointed tone.
Okay.
Definitely, like there's an internal process that happens versus how.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody agree or disagree with those numbers? Anybody have a different set of numbers? Go right ahead. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And now I've totally reversed it. 60% words, 10% language, 30% tone.
Okay,
To me, most of what I would say is, surface people, I'm not trying to spend energy on trying to figure something out, debate something with somebody. And when I say debate, I don't mean that, I mean to say discuss
okay,
what's going on. So, to me, the body language is very distracting words.
okay,
Because I'm trying to express a thought to the other person, and that's what I want to hear from them.
okay,
Their thought, not a lot of sales pitch and reflection with it. So,
okay,
I guess my conclusion is it depends on what you're trying to communicate,
all right,
more than one fits all.
okay.
I guess that's my conclusion.
Okay, so you think in different situations, the numbers could change a little bit? Okay. 10, 30, 60, because you are looking for the content, and the body language and tone of voice are distracting. Okay, you don't want to see that, it distracts you. Sure. Okay, okay. Okay, hmm, okay. Okay, and let me ask you a question. Is it distracting when it doesn't match? Is it distracting when it does match the words, or is it distracting when it doesn't match the words? Okay. 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 All right. Okay. Okay. So it can be distracting. Okay, hold that thought for just a moment. Okay? Has anyone ever communicated with you without using their words, without using their voice? Did you cut anybody off on the highway today, and when they went back by you, they told you were number one? Yeah, we communicated. Anybody get the evil eyeball today? Anybody live with teenagers? Stamping feet, slamming doors, throwing things on the table. Sometimes just by looking at somebody, you get the communication loud and clear, don't you? Yeah. And because of that, studies show that body language is actually 55% of the impact of our communication, face to face. Now, tone of voice comes in at a close second at 38%, because we can totally change the meaning of words based on our tone of voice. I can say, "That's a great idea." Or I can say, "That's a great idea." Two totally different meanings. Leaving words at 7% of the impact of our communication. Now, this actually tells us a lot. Because it says that we'll believe someone's body language and tone of voice before we ever believe their words. If I come up here tonight and said, "I'm Nicki Stevens, I'm really thrilled to be here with you tonight," would you have believed me? No. So the goal is 33.33% across the board. We want our body language, our tone of voice, and our words to all match, to put forth the most impactful message possible. Because if your words say one thing and your body language and tone of voice say another thing, people are going to believe your body language and tone of voice every time. And we said that emotion triggers body language and tone of voice. So when you're communicating, your goal is 33 1/3 across the board. But what this also tells us is that we should pay attention, purposely pay attention to other people's body language and tone of voice, because that's going to help us guide the conversation. It's going to help us ask questions. Would you agree that a lot of people are not willing to tell us what they're really thinking and feeling? But their body language and tone of voice tell us. So that helps us peel the onion, right? We want to make sure ours all match. And when you're preparing for conversation, which of these three do you typically prepare? Our words. Do you ever prepare your body language and tone of voice? From now on you are though, aren't you? So when you prepare, let's not just think about our words. Let's think about the body language and tone of voice that will go along with that, so that all three are matching and they're all telling the same. And that's why I start out with the most important person you communicate with is yourself, because what's going on in your head is coming out your body language, coming out your tone of voice. So you want to make sure that you find your passion about what you're talking about, so that it's not so hard to manage our body language and tone of voice later when we talk about conflict and managing emotions. That's going to help us manage that body language and tone of voice. Does that make sense? Yeah. Does that make sense? A little bit? Okay. That's, yeah. And if the body language and tone of voice don't match the words, then it's very distracting for the people or person that we're talking to, because they're paying attention to that and they're not going to get the message, right? And it's going to be much more influential when all three are matching, much more believable and trustworthy. Now, this is face-to-face communication. On the telephone, we don't have body language. So tone of voice is 86. Oops, and words are 14. And if these numbers are true, where does that leave email? This also tells us that face-to-face communication is the most impactful, productive, effective form of communication. Writing is the weakest form of communication. We run with our perceptions rather than seeking the truth. Think of all the perceptions that we have when we're face-to-face. And now in email, everything's left up to perception, or in texting. Do you think email causes confrontation and confusion? Has a text ever been taken the wrong way? Or communication is difficult. And when you take out body language and tone of voice, it gets that much more. So if you can get face-to-face with someone, you're going to have so much more productive communication. And I also encourage you to partner different forms of communication. Send an email and say, please look over this information and let's get together and talk about it. Then you get the benefit of both forms of communication, because email is a fabulous form of communication when used properly. Let's talk about body language for a minute. And this all comes together for our professional image. Body language. They say we make 11 impressions in the first 7 seconds that we come face to face with someone. What do you notice in the first few seconds you come face to face with someone? Smile. Smile or frown. Facial expression. What else? Posture. Standing up straight or slouching, right? What else do you notice? Eye contact. If they're making eye contact with you or not. And think about those things. What's your perception? If they're smiling, they're in a good mood. Let's talk to them. If they're not, maybe not today. They're making eye contact, they want to talk to me. They're interested. If not, I don't want anything to do with them. Right? If they're standing up straight, we think they got it together. If they're slouching, they don't. Right? I had a woman at the end of one of my seminars come up to me. Now, this was a 6-hour seminar. She was the first one there and the last one to leave. She came up to me at the end of the day and she said, "Wow, thanks for a great seminar. I was really shocked." Now, I had a choice, right? I could have just said, "Well, I'm glad you had a good day. Have a good night. Bye." And I could have turned around and walked away and ran with my perception of why she was shocked. But I'm glad I didn't. I did my perception checking and said to her, "Why were you shocked? When I first saw you today, I thought it was going to be lousy." I said, "Why did you think it was going to be lousy?" "Because you outdressed us all, so I figured you were dressing to make up for what you didn't know." Well, I'd love to go back and ask her another question. What experience have you had with someone in a law firm business suit? And you know, we're all different. We all grew up in different places, different neighborhoods, raised by different people, went to different schools with different teachers. What we've learned, how we've learned it, who we've learned it from has been different. And it's okay that she felt that way. And a lot of people think, "Wow, that was really rude to say that." I'm so glad she said that. I'm so glad I asked her. Because for that reason, I think twice before you wear a law firm business suit. And I've come to realize, she wasn't raised by my dad. I was raised by Mr. GQ, who taught me that when you get up in front of a group of people, you put on a law firm business suit. You notice I don't do that anymore. I strive to be just one level above. I think about what I'm teaching. If I'm teaching PowerPoint, I'm wearing something very faddish and up to date, because you want to see somebody that's creative and up to date. If I'm teaching leadership, I'll put on a jacket. I usually lose it within the first few minutes, unless they all have jackets on. But thanks to her, that it triggered me to think about that. And thanks to me for taking it seriously rather than personally, choosing not to be offended. Some people would be offended by that, right? So people notice what you're wearing. They notice your body language. They notice your tone of voice. It's part of that perception and part of your body language. We want to be open body language. Crossed arms shut people off. Pleasant look on our face. Of course, you got a great look on your face, right? You're relaxed. That's what people say. And I say, "Okay, wait, I'm cold. I'm relaxing." And that's great. But let's not do it the first few seconds that we're with the person. Let's get over the perceptions. Let's set the perception first, what we want it to be, right? Open, approachable, pleasant look on our face, a smile if the situation accepts it. Standing up straight, shoulders back, knees relaxed. If we lock our knees, we're likely to pass out, right? Open body language. Eye contact, so important. Draws people in, shows people we're interested. Very, very important. The handshake. Now, not everybody's handshaking anymore. But if you do, we don't want the bone crusher, and we don't want the dainty lady. Even dainty ladies do not like the dainty lady, gentlemen. We want a firm handshake. So you're going to hold the hand with your fingers, put pressure on the back of the hand with your thumb, and shake. Firm handshake, not a bone crusher. Okay? Now, if you choose not to shake hands, that's okay. You can fist bump, you can elbow bump, you can do nothing at all. If you choose to do nothing at all, make up for it with the rest of your body language and tone of voice and words. Think about what the handshake says. "I'm glad to meet you. I'm glad to be talking with you. I'm glad for this opportunity. Make sure you say that with your body language, tone of voice, and words. I don't think we verbalize enough. I think we leave things up to people's perceptions. Let's establish the perception we want them to have, right? Your stride. Walking strong, confident. I want you to think about, what does professional look like and sound like? What does confident look like and sound like? What does friendly, helpful, credible, knowledgeable, what does that look like and sound like? We've all been in situations where we didn't believe what the person was telling us, or we didn't feel safe working with this person or hiring this person. Think about what perception you want your customers to have, or you want the people that you're communicating with to have. And then think about what specifically are you doing to establish that perception, right? With the woman that didn't like my business suit, luckily I had 6 hours to overcome that and break down those walls. We don't always have 6 hours. So you want to get there as quickly as possible, right? When you're listening, you want to lean forward, show them and make that eye contact to show them you're listening. They say, you know, we had the old picture in our mind about the office, right? The leader was behind the desk. The follower came in and sat in front of them. Well, you notice now they've kind of gone away with that, and they have comfortable areas in offices now where you sit in comfortable chairs and sit next to each other and talk. You know what that is? Because they found that if you're on the other side of the table from someone, you're already on different sides of the issue. But if you sit next to someone, now we're working on this as a team. Our mind plays tricks on us, so we need to play tricks on that brain, right? On our mind. Any questions about body language? Oh, gestures. Gestures should match the size of your audience. One-on-one gestures are small. As the audience grows, the gestures grow. Large audience, large gestures. But one-on-one, large gestures say lack of confidence and way too dramatic. So one-on-one, small gestures. Fidgeting. Get control of those nervous habits. Some people say and ah. Instead, you want to just pause. Some people mess with their hair, hair, jewelry, clothing, click a pen, jig a leg, tap fingers. Calm, cool, and collected. Don't give away your power. Don't show that nervousness. Tone of voice. We want our voice to be musical. Just like a musician takes words and puts it to the sounds of music, we want to take words and put them to the sounds of our voice in talking. Monotone is so very boring and doesn't show any passion at all. So we want it to be musical, okay? Pitch, power, and pace. Our voice naturally gets higher or lower. If we get excited, it gets higher. If we get very concerned, it gets lower naturally. We tend to tell stories more quickly and make strong points more slowly. You want to make sure you speak loudly enough, clearly enough, and slowly enough for people to be able to hear you and understand you, and make sure we enunciate the words. Not participating in a meeting, speaking very quietly, is low on the credibility continuum. So speak loudly enough so the people that need to hear you can hear you. And take up some space. Walk in strong. If you're in the wrong place, walk out just as strong, right? Pitch, power, and pace. You can put power into your words with your breath, or with a little more loudness, or some emotion. Words. Now, words are only 7% of the impact of our communication, but let's make them as impactful as possible. I say use the KISS method. Keep it simple, smarty. Now, that's not the last word you're used to hearing, is it? You're used to hearing keep it simple, stupid. Well, I changed that last word because when we're stupid about something, it's real easy to keep it simple, isn't it? When you're smart about something, that's when it's hard to keep it simple. When you know the technical terms, the industry language, the acronyms, but the person you're communicating with may not know that. You all are communicating about some things that are very complicated. So make sure that your listener, your receiver, understands what you mean. Put it in simple terms, so keep it simple, smarty. Or ask them if they know what this means. Often when you ask that, though, people will say yes because they're embarrassed to say no. So it's better to make it simple. Simple is fast, and simple is global. Be careful about slang, cliches, jargon. Not everybody understands what those mean. A friend of mine sent an email to Hong Kong and said, from here in St. Louis, and said, just give me a ballpark figure. And they wrote back and said, what's a ballpark figure? Now, him being the joker he is, he found a book of 100 American phrases that everyone doesn't understand, and he sent it over to them, and every time he communicated with them, he put one of those phrases in there so they'd have to look it up. There's so many words and phrases that we say all day long that we're so used to. People say to me all the time, how can that be wrong? My family's been saying this forever, and you're telling me it's wrong? Yes, these communication mistakes have been passed down proudly through the generations. Those big words. Have you ever been in one of those conversations where you're going, oh yeah, sure, you have absolutely no idea what they're talking about because they're using those big words? Technical terms. Emotional triggers. You puts the spotlight. It's accusatory. I encourage you to use passive voice instead. This happened instead of you did this. Always and never. Way too dramatic. Always, never. You never do this. Oh, no. On Wednesday, January 2nd, 1983, I did do that. Keep it positive. You know, our brain doesn't process negatives. If you say to someone, don't trip, you're putting trip on their mind, and that's what they're doing. That's what they're thinking about. But if you say, walk carefully, now you're putting that on their mind, walk carefully. So let's tell them what you can do rather than what you can't do. What you're going to do rather than what you're not going to do. What you want them to do rather than what you don't want them to do. Put on their mind what you want them to be thinking about. Avoid weak words like could've, would've, and shoulda. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Weak words. I can, I will, we're going to. Just. I'm just the. It's just. Just is one of those funny words. You're not just, you are. It's not just, it is. Only, I'm only the. It's only. It is. These are very weak words. So make it much stronger by taking those words out. Be specific. Yes, question.
Was the stuff you've been talking about, like, what was your biggest struggle and how long did it take you to kind of get yourself off of it?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like, how long did it take you to kind of wean yourself off of something like a bad habit like that? Like, you know, if you're using some of those words, or what was the one before that? Because like for me, it's, I do a lot of those, and I'm like, how long does it take to fix that?
They say that a habit takes 18 or 21 to 30 days. 21 to 30 days to change a habit to a better habit. However, they can be changed in a day. I think things that are instilled in us still pop up once in a while. Of course, I know people that threw a pack of cigarettes away and never smoked again in their life, right? So I think it depends on the situation and how much. I have many things that were challenges for me. I'll tell you, when you say that, the thing that pops in my mind is I was raised, my mom is the youngest of 10. There's 140-something people in her family, and I was raised that when you go to a family event, you hug everybody in that room, and when you leave, you hug everybody in that room. And when I got into corporate, I had to learn real quick that the handshake was my professional hug. Don't give me no lines and keep your hands to yourself, right? So that was a real challenge for me, was to learn. And the other challenge is I'm what they call a socializer, if you studied the behavioral styles. And so it's all about me, and it's all about fun. So I had to teach myself that it's about them. I had to teach myself to shut up and listen. And that was a real struggle for me. And I still have to remind myself, it's all about them. Shut up, listen, ask questions. So often, whatever your behavioral style is, that's where your real challenges are. Like for the analyzer, they're very to themselves and don't share a lot with other people. But when we share of ourselves with other people are more willing to open up to us. I'm kind of an open book. I tell people everything about myself, and they very easily and quickly open up to me. But I had to learn real quickly that you pick and choose what you share and who you share it with. So what's in your behavioral style is really what you're battling. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Thank you so much for the question. Yes?
What do you use for the behavioral styles? I've heard like the DISC assessment is one, but that's not lined up with what you said, the socializer and the analyzer. Where do you get those from?
Those are actually Tony Alessandra's, and he has partnered with DISC.
Gotcha.
It's called the Platinum Rule.
Okay.
So there's the socializer, the relator, the analyzer, and the director. There's really 16 different behavioral styles because we're one primarily and another one secondarily. So the relator is the people pleaser. They struggle to say no, they're always helping everybody. The director is the one that wants to be in charge and is always right. The analyzer is the number person, and the socializer, well, they're the ones that drive everybody else crazy. Thank you. So let's be specific. We speak in broad terms. How long is forever? When is soon? What time is end of business day? We're leaving it up to perception. So how about Friday at noon? Or by 5 p.m. Central Time? You know, the world's gotten a lot smaller and we're all on different time zones. So now we need to throw that time zone in there too. I statements are very important. I think, I feel, I suggest, I believe. We're speaking for ourselves. Very strong, in my opinion, in my experience. And it kind of clarifies it that this is how I feel. You may be feeling differently. And it allows for that. Tactful phrases. I'd like to hear more about that. I'm sure we can find a way to work this out. I love that. I'm sure we can find a way to work this out. What they call that a positive expectation. It's important to state positive expectations. Help me understand. These are magical words. You see how much more comfortable that is than why? Why is like a spotlight, but help me understand puts it on me. Help me understand. I'm the one that's confused. Not your problem, it's mine. Help me understand. Instead of why. So while words are only 7% of the impact of the communication, it sure can be impactful. And it can certainly make a difference. Let's talk about the most important communication skill, listening. Why is it hard to listen? Because we have something to say. We tend to listen to respond instead of listen to process. We need to listen to process. We have a lot going on your mind. Deadlines, things we need to get done, other things going on. And then there's phones going off and email binging and all that fun stuff. People coming in and interrupting us. So it's hard to listen, but it's so important. All these are reasons why it's hard for us to listen. We're waiting to hear what we expect them to say. We get distracted by their habits. We interrupt the person speaking so that we can say what we want to say. We're afraid we're going to forget what we wanted to say, so we jump in there. So that's one of the big ones that I suggest to you, is to take notes. If you tend to be an interrupter, have a pen and paper with you all the time, or know how to use a notes app on your phone, and take notes instead of saying it out loud and wait till they're done. And you know, in those heated moments, those difficult conversations where you're both talking over each other, if you write it down instead, when they're done talking, you come back to it, and you're probably not going to say anything that you wrote down. It's going to save you from yourself. Those are the things that probably kept you up at night. So let's process to respond. Stephen Covey taught us in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Is that an oldie and goldie? How many of you are familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? What's the 5th habit? It's all about listening. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. We can't begin to solve a problem until we fully understand what that problem is. And we're back to asking questions, which is so important. Here's some listening techniques. First of all, let's eliminate the distractions. Turn the phone off, put it aside. Move away from the computer. Lean forward, make eye contact. Take notes, like I mentioned. Ask questions. Anything you don't understand, ask it. Ask the question. Drives my father crazy. My daughter asks him all kinds of questions. Why, Grandpa? What do you think? Why do you feel that way? Oh, and I visited my granddaughter recently, 4. She's 4. I said, Madeline, why don't you want to do that? Because I don't. Madeline, why do you want to do that? Because I do. I thought, man, I put that in my seminars. That's really good. So ask questions. Keep an open mind. How often is it, this is the way it's got to be done? This is the only way it is. Let's open our mind to the possibilities. No matter how experienced we are, or how old we are, or how much we've been doing this, how long we've been doing it, or how well we've been doing it, there's always a new idea. And let's not interrupt. There's one time, or you can call it 2, that it's okay to interrupt. That's if the person's going on and on and on, or they're repeating themselves. Now, why do you think people do that? Why do you think people go on and on and on or repeat themselves? They have a weak argument? Why else? Do you think that most people feel they're never listened to or never heard? Or they don't feel confident in what they're saying? Or they're nervous to talk to you? You know how you're nervous to go talk to some people Well, some people are nervous to come and talk to you. And you know that. Some of those people you're contacting are some people that are coming to talk to you, they're nervous. They're nervous about buying a house. They're nervous about borrowing money. They're nervous about signing a contract. Or flipping that first house. Or renting for the first time. So, if they're going on and on, or they're repeating themselves, that's when you can jump in. And you jump in with something like this. Before you continue, let me make sure I understand what you've already said. And then you summarize and you guide the conversation along. Or, the other way you can handle that is saying, before you continue, I have a couple questions. And you ask your questions, and then you guide the conversation along. And you're actually helping that person out. We get by with a little help from our friends, or in my case, a whole lot of help, right? So you're helping them along. That's when it's okay to interrupt. Otherwise, take notes and listen. And listen beyond what they're saying. Not only what their words are saying, but what is their body language and tone of voice saying? What do they want to be saying that they're not saying? And those are questions that you ask too. Make sense? Okay. Here's some questions, some examples of questions. Can you give me an example of that? How do you see that playing out? What do you think will happen if? What do you mean by this word, this phrase? Where can I find that information? When is the deadline? Can you help me understand how you came to that conclusion? Ooh, do you like that one? Can you help me understand how that decision was made? Or can you help me understand what went into that decision? Instead of going in and saying, I can't believe they changed that. What are you thinking? Can you help me understand why you decided to change that? See how much different that feels? What are your concerns about that? Any questions about listening?
What about when we are the ones interrupted? Like, so you're giving advice on how not to interrupt, but what about when we are interrupted? Like, what's a proper way to let the other person know, like, let me finish, let me talk?
Well, it depends on the situation, some. If they're interrupting you, that means they're really not listening. So I would say, let them ask the question, because it's probably a question. Or if they're going to contribute, let them contribute, and then continue the conversation with them. One thing that I like to use is LBs and NTs. Do you know what LBs and NTs stand for? LBs are, what do you like best? After a conversation, especially in a conversation that didn't go quite the way you wanted it to, and when somebody interrupts you, it's like, wait a minute, that's not what's supposed to happen, right? Well, if they're interrupting you for a reason. So let's take it seriously rather than personally. And if we say, just let me finish, that's kind of taking it personally. So just hear them out and let them talk. See what they're saying. And then afterward, do what I call LBs and NTs. Say, what did I like best about how that conversation went? And then NTs are next times. What will I do differently next time? You see, I mentioned I'm a talker, right? So I tend to go on and on and on, and then people zone me out. And my ex-husband did that all the time. And then he didn't remember things I told him. So I learned that I only tell him a little bit. So I started where I just tell him a little bit and let him ask questions from there. And I'd end up telling him everything I was going to tell him anyway. It's just that he was included in the conversation. Not everybody wants to be included in the conversation. Some people do. So when they interrupt you, they're actually giving you a signal that they want to be involved in the conversation. So in doing your LBs and NTs, you can think about, how could I have involved that person in the conversation a little bit more? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's taking it seriously rather than personally. You know what Q-tip stands for? I bring my bucket of Q-tips. You know what Q-tip stands for? QTIP? Quit taking it personally. You've heard that before, have you? Do you carry a Q-tip around? Take it seriously. When you take it seriously, it helps you learn and grow. When you take it personally, it destroys you. So feel free, take some Q-tips. Keep it in your pocket. That's it, back to that emotion, right? That's a great way to manage your emotions, to take it seriously. Just like the woman about the business suit. I took it seriously instead of personally, and it'll help me learn and grow. If I had taken it personally, I would have walked away, not asked her any questions. And you know how we walk away and beat somebody up in our head? Yeah, right, I'm dressing to make up for what I didn't know. That's what you wear to a professional business seminar? Did you look in the mirror today? Isn't that kind of how we do people? And then we wallow in the negativity, and we don't learn and grow at all. Or if I say, wait a minute, where's she coming from on this? Then I get to learn and grow. But thank you so much for the question. Any other questions?
One more.
Yeah.
How many seconds did you take it personally? You can take it a little personally.
Boy, I could say so much about that. That's a biggie, isn't it? He said, don't you take it just a little personally? Sometimes. Okay, I'm gonna tell you the biggie. I'm gonna tell you, you asked, how long does it take you to overcome some of these bad habits? I don't tell all my audiences this, but I'm gonna tell you this, because it explains the moment I realized I could Q-tip. I had a gentleman that I was dating for over 5 years tell me he thought my body was repulsive, and he always felt that way. And I looked at him and I said, actually, I'm grateful for the body God gave me, and I'm grateful that I don't have a lot of the challenges that many women do. And I realized that bodies age, and I'm willing to accept that and understand how beautiful that can be. And I didn't punch him, I didn't hit him, I didn't storm out, and I was on the second day of a 2-week trip in a van. And when he got back from the trip, because I came back at the end of 2 weeks, he stayed out later. When he got back, I broke up with him. So, Q-tip works. Now, did I cry a couple times over that at low moments? Yeah. But not only did I Q-tip, but I had a whole lot of people. You gotta have your support system that backs up this Q-tip thing. And I had so many people that were supporting me on that. So you gotta have your support system in there. Like I said, you get by with a little help from your friends, or in my case, a whole lot of help. Let's go through the 5 steps to preparing for any communication. What's the most important thing you think about anytime you communicate with anybody? Okay, more important. Okay, even more important. What do you start with? Your audience. Who's your receiver? Age, gender, culture, knowledge about the topic. How much do they know about this? What's their previous experience? What impact do they have on the outcome? What's their emotion? What's their pain point about this? What confusion do they have? What do they want to know? What do they need to know? What do they need to know that they don't realize they need to know? You want to know as much as possible about your audience. And if you can't know it before you start talking to them, when you start talking to them, you ask them those questions. Because you want to know as much as possible about the audience. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Number 2, why are you communicating? Why are you communicating this information to these people at this time? And number 3, what do you want? What do you want this receiver to be thinking differently, feeling differently, and doing differently after this communication? Now, do you see, if you ask yourself these 3 questions first, how targeted the information that you give them can be, instead of just starting to talk or just starting to type without considering these 3 questions? The 4th question is, which form of communication should I use? Which form of communication is going to be the best for what I need to communicate, for the results that I'm looking for? Like text, what's the pros and cons of text? What's the pros? Why is text, when does text work? It's fast, it's quick, it's to the point. So it's best used when you just have one thing to say. I'm running late for the meeting. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Please bring the extra set of towels or whatever, something simple and fast. It's when we try to use it for a long conversation that it gets kind of nasty, doesn't it? Okay, it's kind of confusing. So if we keep it simple, text works great. The con is that it can be easily misunderstood, because there's lots of questions that need to be answered. Email. What's the pro of email? Why is email a great thing?
Professional.
It's professional. You can refer back to it. It's documented. Detailed. You can attach documents to it. You can think through it. Writing is great because you think through it before you say it. You can go back and edit it. You can save it and come back later and look at it and read it and say, do I really want to send this? Or is this going to get me in big trouble? I mean, once it comes out your mouth, there's no rewind button, right? So people tend to hide behind technology. Speakers hide behind PowerPoint. People hide behind email because, oh, I don't want to talk about this. I'll just shoot them an email. But you can't guide the conversation. That's why I say it's great to send an email and then say, let's get together and talk about any questions or concerns that we have. Right? Because then you can think through how you want to put the information and send the information to them, but still get together and talk about it for all the emotional aspects and all the confusion that could be there. Postal mail. What's the pro for postal mail? I'm sorry? It can be impactful, emotional, okay. It can be. When you receive a handwritten thank you note, how do you feel? Special, good.
It's more impactful in just an email.
It's more impactful. Yes, it feels more professional. It feels like someone took more time and spent a little money on it. It's very professional. Now, you want to make it comfortable when you write, because if you make it too formal, it feels like you're getting sued or audited, right? So make sure that you make it conversational when you write, so they can hear you talking. Isn't it great when you get a text or an email and you can hear the person talking? Yeah, then that's when you feel special. You feel, and those handwritten thank you notes feel real special. You get some of that emotion in there. The phone. What's the pro of the phone? Right, you can have a conversation. You can hear the tone of the voice. So you can guide the conversation a little bit. Take a little more time. You can give responses right away and get questions right away. The con is you can't see the body language. In person. The con is it takes time. pro is, you're right there. You can take care of things. You can see the body language, hear the tone of voice, hear the words, see the emotion, look beyond what they're saying. Social media. What's the pro to social media? Mass communication. That's right. Lots of people can see it. What's the pro of the website? The opportunity to give people lots of information about you and your organization. You just have to make sure that you have something that they can contact you if they want to discuss things with you. And social media, the con is you got to be really careful about what you put out there. That is your professional image at stake. Email, social media, websites, be very careful about what you put out there. Look at the big picture on it and how people will respond to that emotionally, right? People have lost out on jobs and lost out on clients because of social media. And consider using more than one of these, partnering these. Of course, if you send in a postal mail, you want to follow up with that. Send an email, you want to follow up with that.
One thing, if I'll interject, that I found really useful is, I'd imagine it happens with people who don't have iPhones, but I like to use the voice memo. So it's, if you're simultaneously driving or you're doing something where not quite a phone call, but you can kind of communicate back and forth via, the sound of your voice with that recording. Just send it out as a text message.
And then they hear your voice. I like it. Thank you for mentioning that. And that's the little microphone that's on there.
Right.
Oh, that's really cool. I like it. I know since we're talking some about customer service here, there's also a way to put a video into an email. I don't remember the name of the website that you can do that. It costs a little bit to do that, but I got an email. I signed up for classes online and got an email that had an actual video from her, and it came within 10 minutes of my paying for it, had an actual video of her thanking me, and she used my name. Nicolette, I just wanted to thank you so much for signing up for our classes. I'm looking forward to seeing you and getting to know you and helping you build your website. And I was like, wow. And when I worked with her one-on-one, I said to her, how'd you do that? And she gave me the website, but I don't remember what it was. But you can Google putting a personal video in email, and I'm sure you can find it. So really considering what form of communication you're using to get the results that you want, because remember, we're looking for those results. Oops. And then the last piece is brainstorming. Brainstorming the content. What information do you need to give them to get the results you want? What's the who, what, when, where, why, how, the fundamentals. You want to make sure you have all the information in there. What do they need? So do you see, by going through these 5 steps, the information you give them will be much more targeted to the audience and who's receiving it. Does that make sense? That sounds like a lot to go through, but once you start using it, you'll get used to it and you won't even really have to think about it anymore. You'll just naturally be doing that. And many of these pieces you're probably doing now. Any questions? Okay. Let's talk about managing emotion. We said emotion triggers the body language and tone of voice. Emotion can totally destroy a conversation. It can destroy a relationship. But there are ways that we can manage that. First of all, Q-tip, as I shared. Take it seriously rather than personally. We get offended very easily these days. Choose to let it help you learn and grow. Ask those questions. Find out what they really meant by that. Let's talk about anger a minute. When we're angry, first of all the negative emotions are based in anger. And when we're angry, we're actually in fear of losing control of something that's important to us in our life. I'd like you to think about the last time you got really upset. And I bet you can target something you were in fear of losing control of that's important to you, am I right? And fear, broken down as an acronym, is false evidence appearing real. Because it's your perception that you're losing control when really you have a choice. You can react negatively and give away control, or you can respond positively and maintain that control. And when I say control, I don't just mean control of the outcome. I mean control of your self-confidence and self-esteem, your reputation, the relationship, and perhaps the outcome. So when you feel yourself getting upset, think to yourself, what are my choices to respond positively rather than react negatively? What am I in fear of losing control of? Think about what your options are. How can I maintain control? And if you're talking with someone else and they're upset, what are they in fear of losing control of? You know, when you're talking to your clients, you're talking to them a lot about money. And money can be very emotional. If they're spending money, if they're losing money, if they're building their wealth, or it's slipping. And people get really upset when they don't understand something. You know, you're talking about contracts that can be very confusing, processes that can be very confusing. And when you get attorneys involved, people are afraid of attorneys, aren't they? Oh, I'm sorry, there was somebody else in there. Yeah, people are afraid of attorneys, right? So as soon as you start saying, we're gonna sit down and talk to the attorney, or I'll talk to the attorney about it, people get really nervous. So thinking about how you communicate those things to someone and allowing them to be upset. You know, so often when somebody's getting upset, we don't want them to be upset. But letting them have their feelings and acknowledging and empathizing with those feelings. One thing we can use is the feel, felt, found. I can understand you're feeling that way. Many of my clients have felt that way, and I have found that this is a great solution for that. That by following this process, it goes very smoothly, blah, 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 right? The feel, felt, found. And it allows them to have those feelings. And when we hear that other people feel this way, don't we feel a lot better about it? I can understand you're feeling that way. A lot of my clients have felt that way. Oh, I feel so much better. After a lot of my classes, people come up to me and say, it's just so nice to know somebody else feels that way, or somebody else has experienced that, or somebody else is challenged with that. It's like empathy, right? It's like making it okay. So when someone else is upset, what can I do to help them realize the options that they have to respond positively rather than react negatively? That's what our goal is. Like if you work on a customer service line and somebody calls in and you say, Mr. Smith, I'm so glad you called today. If I could just ask you a few questions, I'll get this handled for you and solved for you right away. You just told him he's not out of control. So really this happens very easily. The feeling wheel. You know, we experience a lot of emotions, but we don't always express them. And we express them in ways that we leave it up to people's perceptions what we're feeling. We go in and we blow up. Well, if we look at the feeling wheel, first of all, and the one that's on that sheet is very small. You can Google feeling wheel, there's a lot of them out there. But we can look at this feeling wheel and determine how we're feeling, because often we don't understand how we're feeling to even be able to explain it to somebody else. But once we look at this, then I can say, when I heard about that, I was very disappointed because when you said that, I felt threatened because with all the additional projects, I feel overwhelmed because. And now we can empathize with somebody. You know, when somebody uses a feeling word, then we can empathize because we've felt all these feelings. But when somebody blows up, we go on the defensive. So this is having a conversation rather than a confrontation. Does that make sense? Any questions? Does it feel doable? I always encourage people to print out a feeling wheel and have it around to refer to. Works great with kids. Or if you work in an office or lead a team, it works great when somebody's upset. Want to talk about conflict? Now these all help us with conflict, you know. How do you feel about conflict? You don't like it, why not? It is stressful, very stressful. But conflict's inevitable, isn't it? We establish how different we all are. You put two people together, there's going to be conflict. And really, conflict is just difference. Difference in the way we think or feel, our experiences, or the way we see something. But that can feel very threatening. And it can feel like we're losing control. See how that all fits together? Conflict. It's going to happen. So let's have a conversation rather than a confrontation. What are the risks of not addressing conflict? I'm sorry? It festers. Yeah, it grows. Gets worse. It goes into other areas of your life. It starts damaging other areas of your life. That's right. That's right. That's another challenge that I had. You never get to the root of the problem if you don't talk about it. That's right. And that gets into the other side. What are the benefits of conflict? The benefits. Solutions. You discuss it. It actually builds trust when you're willing to talk about it. Work through it. Generates ideas. It shows you're willing to handle challenges. But most people feel very uncomfortable with conflict. Most people don't want to dive in. Took me a long time I have to tell myself, you got to talk about it. You got to bring it up. You got to discuss it. Those difficult conversations. But think about it, prepare for it. What causes conflict? Bad communication can cause conflict. Differences in thinking about it, behavioral styles, emotional intelligence, gender, age, any kind of differences, culture, any kind of differences. What causes problems? Lack of communication. Inadequate communication. Wrong information, not enough information, too much information. The method. Ooh, how do you feel when you call in an 800 number? What do you hear when you call an 800 number? For such and such, press 1. For so and so, press 2. For such and such, press 3. And you press a number, what do you hear? For so and so, press 1. Right? You go through that about 5 or 6 times, and what kind of mood are you in by the time you actually get a person? Not good. What's that? You want to speak to somebody. I don't want to speak to a computer. And it's like, don't these organizations think about? We create our own stress through the methods that we choose to use with our customers. So if you find a pattern where your customers are getting upset about something, let's look at the method that we're using. Does that need to be changed? Priorities, different priorities. Let's discuss priorities and goals. Make sure we're on the same page with that. Or even if we're not on the same page, we understand what each other's priorities and goals are, right? Values, differing values. One person thinks it's okay to do it this way, another person doesn't think it's okay to do it this way. So really getting to the root of the problem, what's really causing the problem. Think about the last conflict you had. What was really causing the problem? I bet it all comes down to communication in some way or another. And watch for those body language signals. You can tell when somebody's starting, right? You can tell when somebody's getting irritated. What does that look like? Tense, red in the face. What's that? Frowns, fidgeting. So watch for those signals. And why do people behave the way they do during conflict? Insecurity, fear, perceptions, lack of knowledge, prejudices, not understanding what their role is, what their place is. Limited sharing of information. How do you feel when you feel somebody's holding information back from you or not telling you something? Ooh. And often we don't give people information. Withholding information or not giving people information and leaving it up to people's perceptions can cause a lot of trouble. You know, if you don't give people the information, you know what they do? They make it up. So that's why I say we don't verbalize enough. We don't communicate enough. We leave things up to people's perceptions. And then, man, they go wild with that. And that's when that emotion starts going. So tell people the truth. Give people the information if you have it. Here's some methods for handling conflict. First of all, Q-tip, take it seriously, not personally. Ask questions, seek first to understand, not then to be understood. Let's not generalize, let's be specific. Focus on the issue, not the people. Instead of mentioning the people, say this happened. Mary wrote the check for the wrong amount. So instead of blaming, just say the check was written for the wrong amount. Let's focus on the problem. Get the problem fixed. Doesn't matter who did it, let's just fix it. Emotional intelligence. You hear that term a lot. Emotional intelligence is being able to manage my emotions and communicate in a way that helps others manage theirs. And I've been giving you different tips on how to communicate in a way that it doesn't trigger emotion with the other person, right? Or it triggers the emotion you want them to have. And then following that platinum rule that we talked about, that's the behavioral styles. You know, we all grew up with the golden rule. What's the golden rule? He who has the goal makes the rules. Well, that's one of them. The other one is, yeah, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But do we all want to be done unto the same way? So the platinum rule says, and well, platinum used to be worth more than gold. I'm told it's not anymore. But the platinum rule says to treat others the way they want to be treated. But in order, see, treating people the way we want to be treated, that's easy. Because we know how we want to be treated. But to treat someone the way they want to be treated, we got to figure out how they want to be treated. And that's where it gets difficult, right? And that's where those behavioral styles come in handy. As it teaches us about that. And that's all that DISC, Myers-Briggs, behavioral styles, platinum rule, right? And managing body language, tone of voice and words. Making sure they all match. Preparing them ahead of time. Thinking before you speak. That's another thing I had to learn. My head's like a gumball machine. The thought pops in my head, drops on my tongue, and right out my mouth. But boy, stopping that is like, oh. Stop and think about it a minute. Get to the root of the problem. Ask questions. Listen, and listen beyond what they're saying. Encourage them to talk. Look beyond what they're saying. Guide the conversation to get to the root of the problem. Let's look at some de-escalation techniques. Now, in the handout that is on the website, these are all listed. And not only do I have all of this listed, but I also have phrases for de-escalation in here, okay? So de-escalation techniques. First of all, they say that people will get more upset if they're around their peers. So if you take them to a private room and sit down with them by themselves, they will turn into a whole nother person. Also, people are more upset if they're standing. So if you sit down, people tend to calm down. And speaking of calm, we want to avoid the words, now calm down. So when you say that, what happens? The opposite. But if you say, let's talk about it, how do people tend to feel? And give them your full attention. We talked about listening. Put away the distractions. Give them your full attention. Show them this is important. The greatest form of respect is listening. Avoid changing the subject. Stay on topic, stay focused. Consider sitting side by side rather than across the table, as I mentioned earlier. And check your body language, your tone of voice, your self-talk. Appear non-threatening, showing palms, open body language appears non-threatening. Calm tone of voice. If they get louder, you get softer. Using passive voice, like I said, avoid that word you. This happened instead of you did this. And avoid bringing up the past, things that have been handled. That's a hard one, that's a really hard one. Present empathy. Empathize with the person. I can understand you're feeling that way. I've felt that way too. If I were in your situation, I'd feel that way. When I did this the first time, I felt this way. Refrain from judgment. Ooh, that's a hard one too. Or running with those perceptions. Do that perception checking. Remember we talked about positive language, what we can do, what we're going to do, instead of, I'm not doing that. And using those de-escalation phrases. And remember, we're focusing on solutions. We're trying to find solutions to work through this. Make sure you're focused on that rather than criticizing and attacking. Let's work toward fixing the problem, right? Any questions or anything else you use to de-escalate? I'll share some of the de-escalation phrases. What more can you tell me about that? I'd like to understand more about what's happening here. I want to help with this. Please tell me what's upsetting you. Help me understand what you need, what you're experiencing, what happened. My understanding of what you're saying is this. Let me see if I understand you correctly. I can hear how much this has upset you. I can understand how this made things worse for you. That's one of my favorites. I can understand how this made things worse for you. I can see why you would feel that way. I'm sure other customers have felt this way too. I understand it's confusing when. That's a good one. I understand it's confusing when. That's upsetting to hear. I'm very sorry to hear that this has been your experience. I'm sorry to hear you're going through this. This is another good one. You're right, and we need to do something about that immediately. Here's what I'm going to do for you. This is the best solution we have at this time. I've done as much as I'm able. At this point, I need to. Now, you can Google de-escalation phrases. That's what I did, and then I edit my own, and I tweak the ones that were in there because I didn't agree with all of them. Google is your friend. Handling complaints. You ever get complaints from customers? Handling those complaints. First of all, listen. Ask questions. Find out what happened. Let them vent. Make sure you're courteous, respectful. Refrain from blaming anyone, or very much so blaming them. Doesn't matter who did what happened. Now, how do we fix it? So listen, get the facts, and then explain how we can fix it. Give them options if you can. Yes? Yes, that's right. People just want to be heard. And get to the root of how they're feeling about this. That's right. That's right. Customer's always right even when they're not. And you don't tell them they're wrong, you ask them questions. How do you tell the customer they're wrong? You ask them questions. My ex-husband's an architect. He works on custom homes. He's a very good architect. And people would come in, he had his office in our home. And people would come in and they'd say things like this. Oh, well, I bought this software and I already drew the house up. So if you could just seal it for me. Yeah. Called liability insurance, right? I don't think I'm just gonna seal it. And you know how much it costs, that software that architects use? That AutoCAD is really expensive and intricate. And they went out and bought some software. He spent 10 years going to night school to be an architect. He took 10 tests, or actually it took 15 years and he took 10 tests to be able to get that seal. But oh, if you could just seal this. We're not gonna look at them and go, tell them all the things I just told you. So I would say, well, come on in, sit down. Let's take a look at those drawings. Let's see what you've got here. And then he'd ask him all the questions he would typically ask when he would design a home. How are you living in this? What does the land look like? And you know what they'd end up doing? They'd end up going, oh yeah, I don't want that door here, I want it here. And that window, yeah, that window's gotta be a lot bigger because that's got a great view there. He wouldn't tell them, you need to make that bigger and you need to move that door. He would ask them questions and let it be their idea. When it's their idea, it's a really good idea. If it's your idea, so what? So instead of telling them no, ask them questions where they decide they want something else. When they realize it on their own, we don't like to be told what to do. We like to come up with it ourselves. And in a lot of cases, if a customer complains, ask them what they think you should do about it. What would you like to see happen with this? A lot of times customers won't ask for as much as we're willing to give. But make sure you explain the details of the solution and you give them a timeline, and then you follow up with them. Any questions? Let's talk about those objections. When somebody has an objection or a question, they just haven't been given enough information. Or it hasn't been told to them the way they need it to be told to them. It hasn't been explained their way. So it explained it another way. But when they object, at least they're engaged. You want them to object rather than just walking away, right? Mm-hmm. You want them to ask questions. That means they're interested. Mm-hmm. It's managing our emotions when somebody objects, isn't it? Yeah. Take it seriously rather than personally. Because right away we think, oh, I screwed up. If they're objecting, I didn't do it right. Really, they just need more information. I have a lot of people that are sent to my classes. I contract to the national seminar companies and teach a lot of classes about communication. And I have people sent, within 2 weeks, I had 3 people tell me, and my boss told me either attend this class or you're fired. Thanks. It's become a game for me. How quickly can I turn that around? I had a woman come to one of my seminars. It was a management leadership seminar, and I could tell from the moment she got there that she didn't want to be there. She was promoted from a project manager to a people manager. She didn't want to manage people. I don't want to deal with people. Why can't they just do what I tell them to do? Why do they have to ask questions? Why do they have to say they disagree with the way I think I should do it? They should do it. Why don't they just take it and go? The boss used to be the boss. Now we have to be leaders. And then at break, she came back, and there was a gentleman in class with her. They lived in different places. It was Zoom. And during break, he was asking her about her horses. How was it going with the horses? And so I heard this conversation that she breaks horses. So I started asking her, how do you do that? That's really tough to do. It's got to be hard. How do you do that? And she started telling me. You know what she started telling me? Well, you got to be really patient with them. You got to spend time with them and let them get comfortable with you first. You got to let them get to know you. And you got to kind of watch them and get to know them and how they kind of behave and what they're comfortable with. She was basically telling me everything I had told her all morning to do with her people, and she was objecting to it. After a little while, the gentleman caught on to what I was doing, and he started laughing. And she said, oh, I see what you're doing now. You expect me to do with those people what I'm doing with these horses. I said, ding, ding, ding. And at the end of the class, she said, Nicki, I have to apologize. I came in here with a really bad attitude. I didn't want to be here. She said, but thanks so much for opening my eyes. I had a lot of work to do. Thanks for being patient with me. I'm really glad I was here. And you know, that's what we're striving for, right? The customers that you're serving, that you're communicating with, they need to hear what you have to say. And you know you've got methods that'll help them. They just need to follow them, right? And trust you. So what are you doing to create that perception? And how are you communicating with them in a way that they understand? I always say tune them into WIIFM. You know what WIIFM is? Tune them into WIIFM. What's in it for me? Tell them the benefits to them in doing this. And make it simple. Keep it simple, smarty. And let them feel the way they're feeling. Manage your emotion along the way. Any questions? Situations? Yes. Okay. Uh-huh.
This is a more a comment about conflict and dealing with conflict in the real estate business. I think although a lot of these people have a problem that they need to get taken care of, there's a lot of conflict that's caused by their fear of loss.
I agree with you. Yeah. And the embarrassment.
True. Versus that they're more worried about their fear of loss versus what they're gaining.
I agree with you. And letting them feel that way. And helping them see both sides of that. Any other questions? Yes.
All right, so I'm a chronic overthinker, and
Me
there's a
too.
lot of stuff that was in this presentation. How do I go about implementing it without, just without overthinking it, like just-
Okay. Have you been taking notes of start doing and stop doing?
I take notes the best I can.
Good job. Well, that's your start. So just refer to this every day and kind of remind yourself of the things that you said, you wrote down that you want to change, and just try to incorporate them little by little. And do those LBs and NTs. What do you like best about what you did, and what will you do differently next time? And it keeps you learning and growing and moving forward. Because so often we screw up a conversation or a presentation and we say to ourselves, man, I really screwed that up. I knew I would. I always do. That's how we talk to ourselves. But if we say LBs and NTs, what do I like best about what I did? Well, I did it. That's a good one. And then NTs, what will I do differently next time? And then refer to this list once in a while to remind yourself. Because so often we fall right back into our old habits. I also am big on making signs and keeping signs around to remind myself of what I'm working toward accomplishing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Some of what you stated here today is well and good, but I'm in business with a son, and I find that puts a different twist on much of what you're saying there.
Okay,
Because I think what it is love.
yes.
And to put that emotion along with business and a generation difference between he and I causes a lot of different situations and problems maybe.
It does, but they're all differences. Like any other difference. The thing is that you two know each other very, very well. And the other part of that is you know each other's buttons. They can't get your goat if you don't tell them where it's tied up. So some self-talk words, because we said self-talk's really important. Patience, tolerance, sincere, genuine, calm authority. Calm authority. And it's really, really hard as the dad, because you're real proud. I know you are. Dads are. My dad's really proud, and I have to be really careful. But just step back and let him do. Let him make his mistakes. Well, you have to analyze how much money it costs, and is it worth the lesson? And saying things like, what do you think will happen if we do that? How do you see that playing out? Instead of saying, that's never gonna work because I tried that in 1975 and it didn't work, instead of going there, ask him questions. Let him come, just like I said about the customers always right, let him come to the conclusion himself.
I do see in many ways he has, I think, better business sense than I do.
Oh, good
I
job.
see that in him often, yeah.
Good job. So see, you know he's got great ideas, but you don't want it to hurt. You don't want to go through that pain again because you've gone through that pain once already. Well, now he's got to learn his lessons. And you might have to learn some with him. I mean, or you might have to pay for those too, right? Again. But he'll be stronger for it, just like you were stronger for it. But that's really hard. It's all about managing those emotions. And let him know that you feel that way. Be open about that. Encourage that open conversation and communication about it, and get to the details. And let him know the really good emotion there too. I love you. I don't want you to go through that pain that I went through. I did that and it cost me this much. But if you want to try it again, it's a different day and age. And this is what I did. How would we do that differently? This is what I experienced. Let's compare. Let's talk about it rather than pushing back on it right away because it won't work. It's 2024 now, not when you tried it back then. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So just another way of thinking about it. And that's hard. That's hard to do. Those emotions get in the way. Yeah, so kind of thinking outside of the box, you can apply this to many, many different situations. And I have people say that to me all the time. Well, this is different because, well, it is, but I just didn't explain it that way. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I want to say thanks so much. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to discuss them with you, but I want to say thank you so much. And I do want to mention that charisma, think about charisma, a compelling attractiveness or charm that can inspire the devotion in others. And if you look at the components of charisma, it's many of the things we talked about tonight. Remember your action list, and I want to say thanks so much for welcoming me here tonight. It was wonderful to talk to you. If you have anything you'd like to talk with me about, you can talk to me now, or here's my phone number, my website, and my email address. Make sure you go on the website, your website, and get that 12-page handout that I prepared. And feel free to contact me anytime. And if you're a member of any other professional organizations, I'd sure like an invitation to speak there. Or if you work for an organization and they bring in trainers or speakers, please do ask them to contact me and let me have a conversation with them. I go into organizations and customize for them all the time. And I'm also a certified coach. So I work one-on-one with people and with teams, and we set up your communication goals. And then we talk about them from week to week or month to month or whatever schedule you'd like to set up. So I'm very flexible with that. So I look forward to talking with you again. Thank you so much and good luck. I wish you all the best with your businesses. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nicki. Thank you, Nicki. And again, it is on our website. If you're a member of our website, go to log on to our website with your ID, and it's under Member Resources, the button at the top. Document Library is under that, and then there's a folder called Presentations, and it's a presentation called Do You Communicate Successfully? It's a whole workbook, or 12-page presentations of it is all right there. So be a great resource. Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And Nicki will stick around a while. And I will remind you, thanks everybody for coming again. And I will remind you because a lot of us are landlords and we like to, when our tenants leave, we like them to leave our place really clean. And as a consequence, tonight we're tenants of this facility and we want to leave it nice and clean. So we're invited to come back again and re-rent it in the future. So thank you for all coming. See you next month or at some of our other lunches or our networking events. Thank you.